about why business analysis matters, and our theme is theory to reality. So you're going to hear a lot about the theory and how it's supposed to work, but if any of you actually work in projects, reality can sometimes be a little different than the theory. So let's start with a little introduction. My name is Michelle Johnston. Piled higher and deeper, that's what that next piece is there. I actually have a background in technology. I've worked in many technology companies. I've also worked in technology in the higher ed space. And I've worked as an enterprise architect. And then I kind of also have a lot of background in the business side of the organization. And I have a doctorate actually that focuses on management decision making. And I do a lot of work now with large programs on the people side of the people process technology issue. And as was mentioned this morning by Carlos, I have never seen a project that failed because of technology. But I have seen many that hit some significant challenges because of the people side. So,
hi everybody, my name is Maddux with Accenture as well. I'm a senior manager out of our Sacramento office. So I live right here, actually just north of here in Yuba City with my family. I work in our health and public service strategy group, and so like Michelle, I do have both a technical and a business background, and in recent years I've been focusing on helping organizations develop their business case for change, helping them measure their financial and operational performance as a result of that change, and it's been a great deal of fun both on the public service side as well as in the private sector, so we're really looking forward to seeing you all here today. I also might add that while we don't have time to do introductions around this room, we recognize it and appreciate that this is a great opportunity for all of you coming together here today to meet your colleagues and peers in other departments and agencies. And so as we go through the session today and you have an opportunity to ask a question or share some insights, that you'd also introduce yourself with your name and perhaps what organization you belong to and what role you play there. That'll at least get some introductions out throughout the day. Okay? So our session objectives, as Michelle said, our course is called Why Business Analysis Matters. And it was funny because as we were working on this for the last several months, actually with input from public service representatives from different agencies, to figure out what would be most valuable to present today, we realized, goodness, we have less than 2 hours today now, and there are entire volumes of information written on business analysis and entire institutes that have been established around methodologies and things. And so we really wanted to focus today on some key sort of best practices, leading practices, some things that you might be able to take away to apply to perhaps your current projects, perhaps your future projects, but think of it more as a 101 because there's such a broad spectrum of people in this room today that we wanted to make sure that the content was relevant and it wasn't too high of a level, but that we didn't have enough time to do a deep dive. So this will be a starting point for discussion, and then we're happy to talk with you in more detail. Michelle and I will be in the booth later today at the Accenture booth. So let's start with the common challenges. And our slide only allowed for 9 boxes. So I'm sure that we could probably think of some more, and you're probably thinking of some other challenges that you have experienced in your roles, whether it was on project delivery roles or just in day-to-day business, of how business analysis, technology coming together, just the pressures of trying to balance across cost, time, resources, can be really challenging, right? And so we wanted to just kind of bring up some challenges that we typically see when doing big transformation or change programs, and then talk a little bit about how do we address some of these. It may not be solving them, but at least reducing the risk of them occurring. And so we're going to talk about some of those best practices, but as you look up here by a show of hands, have you experienced any of these in your experience? Yes, right? Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of those. In particular, it's interesting because sometimes you'll be on a project and, or any kind of an endeavor that requires business analysis, and it's actually sometimes it's referred to as an optional step, if you will, we can skip that part, right? We've already done that part in the RFP. We've already sort of figured that out in terms of what our needs are. So we don't really need to document those business requirements again, do we? Do we really need to ask of them, meaning the business? And yes, we do. And I think that's something that we'll talk through today. The other thing is sometimes requirements get lost in translation between IT and the business, or the business and IT. Sometimes the business might ask for a solution that actually doesn't address the true business need. And so we may build something that doesn't address perhaps the core key drivers that were established in the beginning. And then what about those stakeholders, this one down here? Do we know who our stakeholders are? Do the stakeholders know who they are? And do they know what role they're playing in the successful project delivery? And how do we engage with those stakeholders? How do we bring them along in that change journey? And Michelle's got great experience in that. We'll be talking about that today. So, what is business analysis? I'll give you just a second to read that. So this is a very academic definition, right? Textbook definition, right out of the Institute of Business Analysis. But what does that really mean in our day-to-day, right, as business analysts? And by a show of hands, the first question I have is, how many of you are actually, your role title is something along the lines of business analyst? Okay, quite a few. And how many of you don't have a role of business analyst in your job title, but you actually perform business analysis as well? It's interesting, so great. That's very common, right? Business analyst as a role is fairly new in the last several years, but it's becoming more and more critical component. So this very academic definition is interesting, but what does it mean in our day-to-day? Well, we need to understand sort of several things. We need to understand as a business analyst, what are the business opportunities or problems that we're trying to address first, right? Then we need to understand what is the context that we're working in. And by context, I mean, what is the business environment, what business decisions have been made, perhaps that would affect the solution that we architect later on in the process. What are it could be a legislative environment, a new statute or law that we need to be mindful of. It could be a technological environment. Perhaps there's been an investment that the state's made in something that the departments now need to plug into. So we need to understand that context, right? I'm seeing some nodding heads, right? So that's the business context and the background that we need to be able to clearly identify as analysts. Then we need to understand and identify those stakeholders. Again, those project sponsors and those stakeholders. So that's hugely important. And we need to understand how to change an organization and bring them along in a journey. And by change, that could mean, changing by processes, maybe creating new processes or updating processes or improving them. It could be people, organizationally, how are you going to change to produce the results that you're after to drive that business value? And then third, technology. What technology is going to enable that change to happen? And so as a business analyst, you kind of need to bring all of those pieces together to drive toward business value. So that's the real definition of what's behind these words, I think, or one offer of that. Okay?